Well, next we turn our attention from old wax records made in the Northeast a century ago to what I think is some hot wax laid down here in LA, a little more recent than that. Chris Strachwitz has spent a lifetime recording authentic, traditional, and vernacular music wherever he can find it. Chris is the founder of Arhoolie Records and the Arhoolie Foundation. And here at ARSC, where his life's work is held in the highest esteem, Chris really needs no introduction. So here he is, Chris Strachwitz.
Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot. And in regard to cylinders, the only comment I have is that some of the most amazing cylinders were made of Mexican music around 1904 to 1908, just before the Mexican Revolution. And if any of you have any of those that are marked corridos, I would love to find them, especially one about Ignacio Parra, which apparently was issued on 2 cylinders. And it was said Mexican music. Well, I discovered there wasn't really much ethnic music recorded in Los Angeles, except for enormous amounts of Hawaiian music. So I'm going to give you one example of a wonderful thing that really presents the crossover between Hawaiian music and hot jazz from the early 30s. All right. Well, thanks to Dick Spotswood for bringing this item to my attention. I didn't have it. So Malcolm Rockwell, who lives in Hawaii, who is is he the grandson or son of Mr. Rockwell, who did a lot of the OK recordings back in the 20s, and he supplied it to us. Thanks to him, as it was Andy Iona, apparently he was the trumpet player on that session. I have no idea who the steel guitarist was. But anyway, let's get on with documenting Mexican music, because that was by far the largest group of ethnic minority at that time. I believe they were still a minority. To come, and they came largely due to the fact that the Mexican Revolution, which really not only started in 1910 but didn't really end halfway by 1920. So many thousands came during that period of the Mexican Revolution, came here to this country just to escape the terror and the total disarray of everything in Mexico. And one of the very first recordings I could find recorded here in Los Angeles was in 1923. Apparently, nobody had recorded Mexican music until then on this side of the border. And this was done by a trio. I have no idea whether these are their first names or their last names, More, Ruby, and Vivo, with the corrido Historia y Muerte de General Pancho Villa. And so he was the main figure, of course, of the It's interesting, though, this was by a trio, and people in San Antonio told me that during the 1920s it was very popular to have trios sing in this fashion, where one voice screams at a really high pitch on top of the other two. Of course, after that, once records became widely available and you could hear just duet singers, duets really became the style of music that delivered Mexican songs at that time, leaving out orchestras and so on. The next selection I'm coming to is from 1926. It's from May 11th of 1926. But to me, it sounds still acoustic. It's a Victor recording by, pardon?
You were going to talk about record stores.
Oh, record stores. Oh, that's of course. Without stores, there wouldn't be any way to sell them. And of course, our wonderful friend, one of the Bahari brothers, was very much aware of that fact that you had to find your market. And these large companies, of course, found people who could operate and sell the discs in whatever areas. And in Los Angeles, they all established this one particular shop that, beginning with the acoustic records, was the place that was selling records, Mexican records, here in Los Angeles. And I think we have a number of, Mr. Calderon was the owner and operator, and in his catalog he was prominently featured with his photograph. But it was and the illustrations is just gorgeous. I just love these old catalogs. They are, and many of them would not only present Columbia records. This store actually carried all of them. I think for a time they tried to limit. If Victor had one outlet, they would say you can only sell Victor records. But I think Mr. Calderon, especially in the later 20s, they were selling all of them, Brunswick, Vocalions, Victors, OK, no matter what the firm that was presenting them. Anyway, one of the recording stars of that time is a woman named Elisa Baruman, who only made one record. And she later became, I think, a well-known theatrical performer, and she obviously toured. And I believe very strongly that this is going to be her version of Mal Hombre, which is about, it's a very powerful woman's song, really. It's about how evil men are, how they leave you in the dirt, how they take advantage of you. And of course, Lydia Mendoza made a huge hit with it in 1934 when she recorded it. But let's listen to Elisa Baruman, who I believe Lydia must have heard at a theater in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, because she said her dad took her to a theater there, and that's where she heard the song, and she had the words written out on a piece of gum wrapper, but she had never heard the melody. And when she heard this woman sing, she got the melody from her.
conmigo lo que todos, lo que son como tú con las mujeres. Por lo tanto, lo extrañes que yo ahora, y en la cara te diga lo que eres. Mal hombre, tan ruin es tu alma que no tiene nombre. Eres un canalla, eres un malvado, eres un mal hombre.
She sings it certainly in a sort of a lighthearted manner, but anyway, that was a style that was still mostly accepted, because what's coming now, what's coming next is the phonograph records. Of course, you could hear the voices of people very clearly. At a theater, you had to really project and I guess really sing very loud and strongly. The first recording artists that they found here in the Los Angeles area, I believe they all came from Mexico originally. And los hermanos Banuelos, they were two brothers, and they had the kind of voices that really projected the corridos of the Mexican Revolution. They recorded a lot of these corridos. Corridos are narrative ballads that really tell true stories. Today, the corrido has sort of been degraded because it's basically nothing but narco corridos that is dealing with the whole business of the scourge that's on Mexico. But in those days, and still going on, that we have real true stories and people complaining about certain things. Anyway, let's listen to los hermanos Banuelos, Adios Estados Unidos, by the United States. They're being deported back to Mexico.
Escuchen esta verdad, escúchenla, compañeros. Todo esto es la realidad en este país extranjero. En México todos dicen, lo dicen por darnos coba, que en este país se recoge el dinero con la escoba.
They had powerful voices, and it was crying style that really people very much like to hear. You also hear the steel guitar becoming very, very popular. I think this is in the late 20s, and they use those. The next one we're going to come to is fascinating. I'd like somebody to pass these out to anyone who wants a copy of this. This is called the corrido, the dishwasher, and it was composed by a fellow named Osorio, who is actually the singer on this record. This is the original version of it by the composer, Osorio y Camacho. His partner's name was Camacho. El lavaplatos, the dishwashers, how he dreamed about. Anyway, you will be able to read the lyrics of it. Let's listen to a little bit of that.
Ser una estrella del cine, y un día de tantos me vine a visitar Hollywood. Un día muy desesperado de tanta revolución, me pasé para este lado sin pagar la emigración. Qué vacilada, me pasé sin pagar nada. Con un cuate que me hizo la invitación de trabajar en el traque. Yo el traque me suponía que sería algún almacén.
As you can see, if you have the copy of it, nothing has really changed. Absolutely nothing, and it's rather a sad situation. Well, I don't have really the time to go into it, but in the previous one, I think Dan Guerrero is going to join us during the second part of this program, whose father actually went back to Mexico during this time when it was really during the Depression when, of course, people here decided, well, we don't need Mexicans anymore, let's send them all back. And a lot of people, even who were actually Americans, because they simply had a Spanish surname, were deported. And I just hope that this will never happen again. Let's go on. This is the beginning of radio, of course, was in the late 20s. And a man named Pedro J. Gonzalez, he was a very revolutionary guy. He was a very interesting person. He had been brought up under Pancho Villa. He was a telegraph operator during the revolution. And he was able to get a radio program going, presenting Mexican music. And the group that he formed were called Los Madrugadores, the early risers who get up early in the morning when the people have to go to work. And that is when the programs came on, very early in the morning. And he not only did the usual thing of, just advertising products and goods and so forth, but he also was a strong labor organizer. And this really upset the officials here, and he was eventually accused of I think, rape and taking a woman across a state line or something. He was sent to San Quentin, and he didn't really get out until I think the mid-40s. It was a real sham but he was a very, very aggressive labor organizer. And let's listen to one of his groups. They were called Los Hermanos Sanchez y Linares. They were known as Los Madrugadores, but one of the groups were the Sanchez brothers and a fellow named Linares. And they did this corrido about Joaquin Murrieta, who of course is this legendary bandit, but he really was very upset in the middle of the 1800s against the gringos, because during the gold rush, all the Mexicans were denied access to that whole area, and it was a really disgusting scenario.
Cuando bien nacer a un niño, huérfano a mí me dejaron. Nadie me dio ni un cariño, a mi hermano lo mataron, ni a mi esposa Carmelita, cobardes la asesinaron.
It's quite extraordinary of how popular Los Madrugadores were. And Pedro J. Gonzalez actually had two different groups, almost like a society orchestra, that would have an A band and a B band and a C band. Depending how wealthy you were, they would come and play for you. Well, I think Pedro J. Gonzalez also had this, so if you were able to hire the Madrugadores, you will get the Hermanos Sanchez and Linares, and otherwise you get Chicho and Chencho, I believe, were the other group that were called Los Madrugadores. Let's go to one of the orchestras that was recorded here. They're called Banda Chihuahua, so I guess they came to Los Angeles from Chihuahua, probably from Juarez. And they do this intriguing thing called La Negra. You will, I think, hear how influenced they were by American music. Orchestra, I thought, combining again the Hawaiian guitar and wasn't that sort of the black and white, right? What do you think it sounded like?
It's reminiscent of Australian
Yeah, it's a combination of various sort of ragtime numbers, I think. I want to give you a little short piece by the most popular girl duet that began recording in the mid-30s. And I just have to give you a little taste of them because they were very smooth. They became the huge hit, Las Hermanas Padilla. And they were unfortunately accompanied by Mr. Acuna. Did you ever meet Mr. Acuna? Yes, Manuel Acuna. But he was a very well-educated musician, and he directed many of these orchestras. He called them Los Costeños. Unfortunately, to my ears, they were sort of mousy. I mean, they weren't really a mariachi, and they weren't really an authentic group. But anyway, here's one of their recordings. Very smooth, sturdy style. By 1937, mariachi music was very much in vogue as far as the ranchera music goes in Mexico. But here, apparently, Mr. Acuna didn't really like the real mariachi, so he tried to make it a kind of a pleasant orchestral combination. He was very successful in selling this kind of music. Now, in the post-war era, which we're coming to now, the main label was Azteca Records. They were formed, and from the beginning, they were smart enough to hire one of the most amazing trumpet players, Rafael Mendez, who played in the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and he also could play almost any kind of music. And let's listen to him opening this selection for a singer named Fernando Rosas. Oh, he will play the muted trumpet intro to this song, which is a bolero. Oh, we can't get it? No, it doesn't. Oh, what a shame. Well, we'll have to try. It doesn't work. Huh? Okay, computers seem to fail.
The other Azteca picture. Well, that's the next one.
That's,
I don't have it.
okay, sorry, we can't hear. So we're going to have to. He played a beautiful muted.
I got it.
Oh, you got it. Okay. This was his orchestra.
Palabras de mujer
And backing this singer.
cerca de ti.
Beautiful orchestral tradition. It's, of course, a huge one, too, in the Mexican music field. I'm just touching on a few things. It's a varied scene. And the next one, he's going to be playing with the Mariachi Azteca. And again, the good owner of Azteca Records was smart enough to hire him because he was able to do it all, and he do it beautifully. Here he is accompanying the Dueto Azteca, Maria and Memo, with the amazing hit song
Azteca 290, matrix number PM-189-2, Sabor de Engaño,
okay.
Liria Mendoza.
Oh, wait a minute.
That didn't sound right.
No, you got the wrong record.
All right, we get that one.
This is The one I'm hoping for is Azteca number 260. You don't have it. Okay, sorry, we're going to have to skip him, but he was awfully good at playing pure mariachi music. So we're going to go to end this part of the program with one of my very favorite sounds of all times, that is women duettos. And these are the two sisters of the great Lydia Mendoza, Juanita and Maria Mendoza, and they recorded tons of records for the Azteca label. Lydia actually accompanies them on the 12-string guitar. Here they are. Oh, come on, play it. Corazón Mexicana. Mexicana. Oh, shoot. Visiting from Texas and recorded enormous amounts here.
Tengo el corazón bien puesto a la izquierda de mi pecho para amar y padecer. Solo este hecho a mí me anima, pues un trapo de cocina, eso nunca lo he de ser. En verdad que tuve calma, pues te quise con el alma como nunca lo has de ver. Pero tanto tú me hiciste que por fin me decidiste en tenerte que perder. Porque yo soy noble y sincero, mi corazón sabe ser fuerte. Cuando me doy entero. Cuando me voy pa' siempre.
Hermanas Mendoza, the Mendoza sisters. Well, that was much more the norteño style from Texas and northern Mexico. But anyway, that gives you a brief overview of sort of what was recorded in the field of Mexican music. I'd like to now turn to the second part of the program, where I want to deal with the greatest of all the singers dealing with Mexican American and Mexican music here in Southern California. And his name was Lalo Guerrero. I'm going to start with one of his first compositions, wasn't it? A Canción Mexicana. No. Oh yeah, this is it. That's okay, cool. This is Mexico's very first.